Elizabeth, I'm excited to share this Bidly buy versus rent calculator with you today. Let's get started. So we start here with the price of the house that you're looking at. So right now we have a $300,000 house that you're considering buying versus a monthly rent of about $2,500. So is that a reasonable price to you, or are you thinking of bigger house? What's your budget?
My gut is to keep it under 350, so 300 seems good.
All right, we'll keep it at 300 for now. So in down payment, 20% is kind of traditional, but you can put as little as like 3% down, sometimes even 0% down. So what are you thinking in terms of a down payment?
What's the benefit to doing a larger percent down?
If you put a larger percent down, the bank will sometimes give you a lower rate. Most of the time, though, it helps you if you pay 20% or more. You don't have to get mortgage insurance, which can be a big driver to some people. And then obviously, the more money you pay up front, the lower your monthly payment is going to be. And so, depending on your interest rate, that may or may not be a good deal. But it's also hard to get all the cash together to be ready to
Hmm.
spend it when you buy a home.
Okay, maybe around like 15% is what I'd put down.
Okay. We'll make it 15%. So if you're under 20% and you needed to include mortgage insurance as well, you can include that in property insurance, or you could make that as like a separate line or include it in the interest rate so it's in the mortgage payment. Here we've got cash closing costs. And just to take a step back for a second, everything in blue, those are the numbers you want to change. In black, that's generally a formula. So you just change the numbers in blue to kind of get to what makes sense to you. So cash closing costs of about 1.5% are pretty standard. Uh, just in terms of paying title companies, all the kind of expenses that come with buying a house. And then you generally have to pay some money to get the house in a livable condition. So 6,000 might be a lot, might be a little, depends on the quality and kind of condition of the house that you're buying. What are you thinking in terms of how many expenses you want to pay there and how much you want to do yourself versus have others do?
Hmm. I think the home I'll be buying won't be a new build, so maybe 30 years old or more. And within the first year, I imagine a mix of trying to DIY some myself and also paying for repairs and professional labor. So budget probably 15K.
Okay. Yep. So that's about 5% of your home purchase price that you're paying in the first year in terms of make ready expenses. So we've got your standard 30-year mortgage, but you could change that if you're looking at a 15. Interest rate was 7.25. Interest rates have come down a little bit, so put 6.75 is the current rate here in November. Then these are some assumptions. So, and this is kind of the annual price, and then this is converted into a per month price. So property insurance generally runs about 1% of the property price. Property taxes, those vary by jurisdiction, so make sure to look those up. We'll leave it here at 1.2% for now, and then maintenance. So generally, this is about 0.5% to 1% a year, just in maintenance costs on the house. Then you might or might not have an HOA. Let's hope that you are avoiding an HOA because many people are tired of theirs. And then utilities. So you want to get an estimate for how much you might be paying a month. Do you have you kind of looked into what you might pay for utilities here? Do you
Yeah,
have
so
any
I think
guess?
my roommate and I actually split utilities, and I pay around $100 for electric, gas, and sewer, and then I pay for internet on top of that, which is around. I think we split that too. I think it's like $80 a month, so $40 additionally.
Gotcha. But if you're buying your own house, you probably got to pay full on all those things. So we just
Mm.
doubled that 140 to get to your 280 a month. Then if you had any other expenses, you know, that are part of this, you could put those in here. So the point is, overall, you're spending $2,600 a month buying a house. And then you're also paying a lot of money up front, 65 grand almost in cash to occupy, make it good. On the other hand, do you know what you're looking at in terms of renting?
Yeah, currently I pay $1,400 a month for rent.
And is that comparable to the house you'd get for 300,000?
No, that's way
Because
smaller.
again, yeah, so it's way smaller and you're splitting it with someone else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to double that. So maybe call it 3 grand. We could change it a little more, but we can leave it around there. You may or may not have renter's insurance. Do you pay extra for parking?
No.
So that's nice. And then uh, we'll assume no storage for now, that you don't have to store other goods elsewhere while you're renting. Depends on how big a house you have. Utilities are generally about the same. Sometimes, so you can make these the same or slightly different. Sometimes landlords want to charge you a little more on top of the utilities, so we'll just leave it at here. So here's your total cost renting. So now to get to the fun part, here's some assumptions. We're going to assume your property increases in value by 3% a year. You can change that if you want. Annual inflation for rent is assumed at 5%. That might be a little high, but a lot of investors are buying this because they want to make money and keep hiking the rents. So, especially if you're in or near kind of a metropolitan area, this is not too bad. And then inflation for expenses, it's probably a little high, especially as inflation has cooled a lot. So, maybe we'll say 4% for those. And then we'll say, hey, what commission are you paying? So, if you're using Bidly, you could save a lot of money on this here. But for now, we'll just use the general 7% commission. And then we're going to assume that you live in the house for 10 years. But you can change that. So if you want to only live there for 6, you can see, hey, is this still a good idea for me or not? And then finally, this is what do you think the opportunity cost is? How much money would you make if you invested that money in the stock market instead of buying the house? So then this just walks you through, here's what your home's worth, here's the mortgage that you have on it, here's the amount of money that you have to pay to start with, and the mortgage each year, some other expenses. Then, of course, you sell your house at the end of 10 years and you get some money back. And so then this tells you, hey, here's how much you end up spending the whole time. You spend $250,000 buying the house and then eventually selling it. With rent, you spend all these things, you end up spending 500,000 during the time. However, if you invest that money instead, the answer is that you would have done a little bit worse renting versus buying, even if you can make 10% a year. Because this is a positive number. This is saying that you actually save $82,000 in current money. Be, so all discounted back to the present if you buy rather than rent, given these assumptions. So if you had this set up, this would say all else being equal, if you didn't care if you owned or not, it's probably a better decision to buy, and it'll save you about $82,000.
Well, thanks for walking through
Then,
that.
of course,
Any other notes on
yeah,
this, the things I should consider?
nope. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to info@bidly.homes.
Sweet. Thanks, Andrew.